This is the gospel according to the IRS, Breaking Points and Church Financial Updates. And now, here's the authority, Dr. Michael Chitwood and Breaking Points.
This is Breaking Points. Welcome today to the program. I'm Michael Chitwood, and we have a great program for you today that's dealing with the continuation of ministers being audited by the Internal Revenue Service at an alarming and rapid pace today if you don't know what you're doing. Now, you shouldn't be afraid of an IRS audit if your personal records are in order. But if your personal records are out of order and out of the condition they're supposed to be in, you better get them in order quickly. In fact, Reverend, I speak this word to you now. You better get your house of worship in order now before it's too late. Because God cannot bless a mess. I've learned this over the years, that when churches get their house of worship in order, they're able to go to the next level. Luke tells us about this. He says, if I can learn to trust you with small things, if I can just learn to trust you with small things, then I'll know I can trust you with great and mighty things. If you get involved in an IRS audit, it could cost you everything that you own. Money, as well as maybe time being with your family. I want to talk to you today about something that's most important. The subject is criminal penalties, criminal tax evasion for you, and you may not know that it's you, and you may not know what you're doing qualifies for criminal tax evasion. Beware, preacher. You better get your house of worship in order, because if your church books are wrong, I can assure you that your personal tax return will be wrong. No matter who prepares it, it could be wrong. Grab a pad and pen. Welcome to the program today. I want to talk to you about tax evasion. It's not that you're doing it intentionally, but I want to read something to you. The American Bar Association says, by the way, that 37% of you preachers out there have a chance of having some type of a tax problem or some type of a lawsuit problem in the 12-month period of a year. 37%. That's a huge percentage, ladies and gentlemen. But here's what I want to point out to you. Criminal penalties, criminal tax evasion. Listen to the definition of it under Code Section 7201. The elements of a crime are willfulness and the attempt to evade any additional tax. Willfulness. You have to be willfully involved in that. Well, that's not you, but it could be someone like a board member that's voting for things because they may know it's wrong. Fraudulent tax advice. Listen, any person who aids, assists, or procures counsel or the advice or the presentation of materially false or fraudulent return, affidavit, claim, or other document is guilty of a felony. There's 10 penalties that I'd like to bring to your attention here very quickly. Willful failure to file a return, Code Section 7203. You need to be writing these down in your pad and pen. So 7203, the willful act of failure to file a return. Number 2, willful filing of a false or fraudulent tax return, Code Section 7207. Some of you need to take the test and see if this meets you. Take the test and see if your tax return is in order. Take the test and see if your house of worship's in order. Number 3, the willful failure to pay tax, Code Section 7203. The willfulness, the failure to pay tax. Number 4, the willful failure to collect or pay tax over a period of time, 7202 of the Internal Revenue Code. Number 5, the willful failure to furnish a W-2 to employees in the manner at the time the information is required, or the willful filing of a false or fraudulent W-2. Now that's very important, and the reason why that I stopped there is because of this. You do understand that if your bookkeeper, and we know she's not a bookkeeper now, she's a check writer. If your check writer is not putting everything in the W-2 that should go in there, let me examine one thing. She writes you a monthly car allowance check, a monthly gas allowance check. Can she write you a check for that? She can write it for that, but Section 61 says that whatever she calls it is immaterial. She should have put those amounts into your W-2 form. That's filing a false W-2 form. Number 6, the willful failure to keep proper records. Every church, every pastor, every church, every nonprofit organization is required to keep proper records. Number 7, the willful failure to supply tax information, Code Section 7203. Number 8, the willful failure to obey a summons, Now we're starting getting serious, because you do understand with the Internal Revenue Service you have an audit division, you have what we call the tax collection division, and then you have what we call the CID division, which stands for Criminal Investigation Division. It's important that you make sure that you have all of these components in order. Number 9, the improper disclosure or the use of a tax return information prepared by a preparer. Code section 7216. And the last one, various other offenses relating to tax returns, statements, and other items that go into your tax return. Now here's the point. You cannot prepare your tax return by yourself. You do not have the knowledge. The Bible says that you have to have knowledge to do this. Number 2, if your bookkeeper doesn't know nonprofit law at the church, then more than likely your tax return is going to be wrong, because if your church books are wrong, then your pastor's tax return must be wrong. The only desire that I have is to help you understand that you need to have your tax return right. Then if they select you for audit, which is very possible, your chances are way up now that a minister of the gospel could be and probably will be audited quicker than you did before. They have reduced the agents down, but ladies and gentlemen, they've stepped up the number of audits for certain groups of people, and ministers of the gospel fits that category. If you're a minister of the gospel, if you're licensed, ordained, commissioned, or an exhorter, and you're receiving benefits from your church or a W-2 from your church, which you should be, then ladies and gentlemen, when you prepare your tax return, it asks you at the bottom, what is your occupation? When you put minister or pastor, then that automatically puts you in a category that you could be subject to the audit and the examination requirements of some internal revenue agent. Now, make sure that you have all of the facts in your tax return now. Don't take a chance. Don't let that go too far, too long. Remember, if you ever want to have something you've never had, you must do something you've never done. And if He can trust you with small things, then He can trust you with great and mighty things. And one last word. I know I'm way over. They're trying to cut me off, but I got to say one last thing. I believe with all of my heart, and I've been doing this for years. Our firm's been doing this for 50 years plus. I believe with all of my heart, when you get your house of worship in order, God will bless you with more income in the church. You'll see more spiritual souls being saved in the church. You'll see more income in the church. Your church will do better in the church. Remember, the Bible says a house divided cannot stand. And don't let the board try to tell you what to do if it's wrong. Stand up for what you believe is right. And if you don't know, seek somebody that's a professional that deals with churches and ministers. I want your house of worship and your personal finances and tax return to be in order. Until next time, this is Michael Chitwood. I'll see you on Breaking Points tomorrow. Thank you.
Breaking Points gives you the latest IRS updates and tax law. Pastor, if the IRS came to your church today, what would you say? If you really want your house of worship in order, call 1-800-345-9117.